happy to have you here. This is a very important night. We've got our poet in the corner madly signing books because people cannot wait. But I'll do this little thing while she does that little thing. Helicon West is an uncensored public reading series. We host published authors and community writers to showcase all levels of craft and skill. We welcome open mic readers. There's a sign-up sheet in the back by the coffee. Go sign up and you can read for 7 minutes or less. If you read for 7 minutes, we'll start clapping, and that means make way for the next reader. We welcome donations also. We have bookmarks with a QR code back there in the corner. It's the coffee bar. Help yourself to some Cafe Ibis decaf while you're back there signing up and donating. And add your email on that sign-up sheet if you're not on the Helicon West email for me to remind you when the next Helicon is. And use a lid for your coffee. Make sure that it's on really tight. Sometimes you put a lid on and then it's not on tight and then someone kicks their foot and whoosh. So, Helicon West humbly acknowledges that we are here on the territory of the Northwestern Band of the Shoshone Nation. We're grateful for our sponsors and partners, Sugar House Review, the Logan Library, thank you Joseph, the English Department, Cafe Ibis, and our community volunteers. For information and interviews and all kinds of things about Helicon West, go to heliconwest.wordpress.com. A special request, keep the doors closed. It looks like they're closed, so that's good. We don't want anybody to hear uncensored stuff if they're not liking uncensored stuff. Tonight we have with us Millie Tullis. Millie Tullis is a poet, editor, and researcher from right here in the Valley. She holds an MFA from George Mason University and an MA in American Studies and Folklore from Utah State University. And Millie was one of my favorite USU Writing Center people. She and I gave presentations on poetry writing to scientists and other fascinating folks on campus. I write with Millie still every chance I get, chances generously given to us by our friend Sean Anderson, another of my favorite writing center people, and Britt's here, another of my favorite writing center people, and they used to coordinate Helicon West. Millie's poetry and her folklore essays have been published far and wide. Her digital micro-chapbook, Dream with Teeth, was published by Ghost City Press in 2023. Her research has won many awards. She is editor-in-chief of Exponent 2. You can find out lots more about her and read some of her writing, which I have done, and I'm so glad, at millietullis.com. In Millie's new book, the one she's brought with her tonight to sell, These Saints Are Stones, in this book, the speaker is haunted by her great-great-great-grandmother, Martha. Martha married her stepfather at 16 and became a sister wife to her own mother. Though Martha could write, she left no written history. The poems in this book are scraps of memory blended with dreams. They're haunting. Let's listen. Here's Millie.
Thank you, Star, and thank you, everybody, for being here. This is, I told Star not this morning, like an hour ago, but I feel like Helicon is where I felt like I could claim I was a writer, so it feels really hard to explain how great it is to be here and be a featured reader, so thank you. Starr gave some pretty good context for the book, which means I don't need to give as much. I also will give a little less context than I do for South Carolina readings. But if you do have questions, things can get confusing in family trees, so you can always ask me after. And some general trigger warnings based on everything Starr told you. So this book was my MFA thesis, which I graduated in 2021, but the earliest of these poems I wrote in 2019. So this book has shape-shifted a lot in a lot of little ways, and so I'm excited to share what its fixed form ended up being with all of you. And I'm going to start at the beginning. I'll share page numbers for anyone who has a book and kind of wants to read. It can be nice to see what it looks like on the page. I'm going to start at the beginning with a poem titled After on page 4. After. My first sister was named for the pioneer who hit a hungry Paiute in the back of the head with firewood. My second sister named for the pioneer who nursed her dead sister's baby on the trail, the baby who fathered the 11th prophet. I was named for the woman who met Butch Cassidy and didn't tell the sheriff for 3 days. No one is named for my grandfather's great-grandmother, a pioneer girl who married her mother's husband at 16, who delivered him 12 children. And the next page, this poem's titled Martha with a comma, so it's a direct address to my great-great-great-grandmother. Martha, I know some things about how you lived here. The house was wood and white, the cellar filled with potatoes, pears, little apples. I know the year you married him. Later, a lean-to collapsed on 2 of your babies. Later, your oldest girl fell in the fire. I wrote their names down, but there is more I can't see. Starr actually did a really great job giving like a 2-sentence version of kind of the premise of this dynamic that I was looking into and researching. In general, before I started writing these poems, I was interested in gendered violence and sexual violence and consent in troubling power dynamics and women's narratives and women's history. And researching Martha and her mother Alice and their husband David, and Alice's first husband who was dead, who she was sealed to, was named Thomas. Those are kind of our main characters for this first little bit. Was also really an interesting way for me to think about women's history and what gets saved and remembered and kept and what doesn't, and having this be a book that both is really rooted in research and imagination kind of felt like the only way I could tackle that. There's also a lot of cemeteries and rocks. Yes, if you don't enjoy cemeteries, give it another try. There's something for everyone. There's all sorts of different rocks. And there's a couple of poems titled Pinto Cemetery, and actually in the book several poems share titles and kind of echo across. So this first one is on page 6. Pinto Cemetery. It is not a town, there is no town. It's a place. There is a sign and a road. A memory. I was small when we drove here. Summer, the long dirt road in. My parents offered $5 to the child who found David's grave first, then pulled up to this cemetery, barely bigger than our yard. Do I remember this day or my parents telling this joke? There is no grass, just fabric flowers thin from sun, a chain link fence, a flagpole, no flag. I do not know which graves are graves. Some markers only branches or iron bars rising from dirt. Other headstones are stone but illegible. Sandstone after water, wind, years. This time I find Alice and Thomas first. Their large gray headstone gives no hint that she remarried after he died. The stone is new, replaced maybe 40 years ago. Someone I must be related to has struck 6 metal poles in the ground around their graves, connected them with a chain, stuffed plastic flowers down each pole. The dirt is gray in some places, pink, then red, bouquet of red, fingertip small coral gilia dragging into October. I'm going to read the other Pinto Cemetery poem. This is on page 10. Pinto Cemetery. A year after David married Alice, they had their only child together. Thomas, named after Alice's dead first husband. Thomas, the baby, was sealed to Thomas the father through her. He was David's son in blood, not in heaven. Months after Thomas's birth, David married Alice's daughter, Martha, his eternal wife. But Alice's baby Thomas is listed on the back of David and Martha's headstone under our children. First, I think Thomas is buried there too, but he is far from this family patch of pale earth. On page 13, this is after Pinto Cemetery, and then we'll move to some other locations. When I call my husband about the graves, it's all clarifying relationships. Who married who? Whose baby was that? The names are common and repeated. I mix up 2 babies, realize the next day. I crave simple sentences, but confuse mother, father, husband, daughter, sister, wife. And the next page, this is Helpmeet. So this poem, and a lot of the poems in the book, in addition to sort of being interested in women's history generally, a lot of the ways I absorbed family history and specifically pioneer history as a kid was through family stories and talking about pioneers and telling family stories. My mom was really good at that, and her family was really good at that. And there are a lot of family stories on this specific dynamic that Alice had suggested that her daughter marry her husband, which I struggle to. This whole book is me struggling to picture anything, and I don't. In many ways, it's a productive failure to imagine what I really can't understand. But so this poem is specifically thinking about trying to plot how that maybe could have happened, and then also kind of just failing. So this poem is titled Helpmeet. Married less than 2 years, Alice tells David, "You need a wife of your own." The family record says this. Alice was sealed to her dead first husband. Women can be sealed once, men many times. Everyone must be sealed to enter the kingdom of heaven. So Alice, who was his wife, was only his wife for time, not eternity. I imagine Martha nearby, when her mother says this. If her mother says this. Doing what 16-year-old pioneer girls did. Sewing, milking, gathering eggs, holding the baby, her half-brother. But say it is night, night as in early morning. Alice awake, the baby fused to her breast. When David stirs, she says, "You need a wife of your own. Let us pray about it." Maybe he kneels and she sits up in the bed, holding the baby as the baby's mouth holds her. And Martha sleeps with her sister in the other room. Or the baby is big enough to sleep with his sisters, so their mother, who is 42, might sleep through the night. But likely, in this first frontier house, there is only one room. When David rises, his stepdaughter, Martha, the next girl he sees. Family stories. Alice suggested Martha to David herself, but here my imagination breaks. The words won't come out of the mother's mouth. Okay, so there's some other kinds of forms and things going on around the same kinds of questions and this dynamic. Kind of going back to thinking about historical gaps, one of the forms I used in this book was erasure. But before the erasure, I wrote epistolary poems, which are poems in the forms of letters. And part of why I did that is that David went on a mission, and there actually are letters in a journal between him and the family, but they're all addressed to dear wives and family. And then Alice actually dies, and then it's dear wife and family, and the children are the ones who write back to him. And so, as Starr said, you know, there's nothing that's Martha being the speaker writing this letter. So I created letters that sort of couldn't exist in these poems. So I will read Dear Father. This is on 24. So this is kind of imagining a letter from Martha to David. Thomas was sick last week, sweating and crying in bed, as pale as a shell. He is better now, but scared Mama hardly spoke. The third night he was in bed, I didn't know if it was spirit or my mind, but just before the fever broke, I sat with him by the fire. I thought he looked just like Papa for a moment, his nose a little sharper, otherwise perfect reflection. Papa, but sleeping, but a boy like I never saw him as. You and Mama did the sitting up when Papa got sick, but I remember the day he died, the morning. I woke early, started the coffee. You came in from Papa's bedside, saw me boiling coffee, not knowing Papa was dead. Your face when you see me, I must have been 11. I thought, you must have taken me barefoot, loose-haired, starting that little fire, to be a ghost slipped in through the new glass window. So section 2 is a couple of these small epistolary poems, and then section 4, I erased them. So you can actually, if you want to buy a book, you can actually do this, and you can see that some of them will line up, and you can like see how this poem lives inside of this poem. But I kind of broke those letters up and did erasure, and that was a way to, I think erasure is sort of inherently interesting because it's already text that has a history, like there's already a context, but also I think thinking about gaps and silences and absences. It was a way to make that very loud on the page, and also kind of freed me up to think a little bit more just through these images. So these are a couple of small erasures that come out of that letter. A shell is a reflection. The sick remember the dead. See me, bare-haired through the window. I'll read one more letter and then one more erasure. This is page 26. Dear, today the baby ate a little tomato, her first, the face she made. I gave her a boiled one too, she liked this better. She is pretty, thin-faced, like you. I worry about her quiet. At her age, Thomas could sing hymns, chase chickens, hold the door. She doesn't even cry. Mama promises it'll be a boy this time. All the salt I've been wanting. I had the dream again last night. He'll come before the snow. And the erasure is on page 57, and you can tell that these are related poems. You hold the salt, the snow. So one of the other kind of main types of poems in here are dreams. And dreams were, I kind of recommend anybody write little dream poems. They were, it was a really fruitful way to imagine into things that I kind of couldn't imagine because they didn't need to be a narrative or resolve very much, but I could kind of work with some details and images I had and kind of use a dream as a little imagination box. So I'll just read a couple of these. These are in the last section. So, and I wrote dreams for multiple people, and some dreams are not assigned to anybody, but this first one on page 61 is Alice Dreams. She is washing Thomas's shirts. She is beating them on the pink rock. The angel says, Thomas is dead. She will give the shirts to David. She is washing David's shirts in Little Pinto, where he will baptize her again. I'm just gonna, these are kind of all in a row, so I'm not gonna keep telling you page numbers for a minute. Martha dreams her mother's face in the cellar, gray eyes closed under a barrel of yellow pears. The boys are nowhere when the roof breaks. She opens the yoke over the fire. Someone has killed the young rooster. His neck reaches clear across the yard. Dream. Grandma is teaching me to weave birds. They are black thread birds. When she stops, I slip in my hand to see that they are still downy. Grandma's mouth is sewn with a thread the color of her hair. Outside, I gather the red dirt. I will make a robin from this dirt. I spit on my hands until the bird breathes. Alice dreams she cannot find her comb, and the house has no babies, rooms, or beds. Only dirt floor and colored strips, someone cut for quilting. The red cloth spreads, her fingers rake the white strands as if they belong to someone else. Someone else finds the knot and pulls. This last dream I'm going to read is one of Martha's, and this is actually the first poem I wrote in this book. And I wrote it, and I was like, that was really strange. And I took it to workshop, and people were like, that was really strange. And I was like, maybe I could write more ancestor dreams, and now it's 8 years later, so. Martha dreams of green apples, of Bolton, of pissing her only dress when she couldn't stand in the boat's black belly, of the baby hardening in her black dress. Her mother breathes nearby, her baby loose in the bed. In her dreams, their husband stands an inch above the dirt. Okay, I will read a couple more from actually the middle section, which is a little bit more, there's some kind of poems that are interested in place, and also some kind of more personal poems about growing up as like a little Mormon girl in the 90s and the way that I thought about pioneers and kind of how pioneers played into my own mythology, and but also kind of more broadly thinking about women's labor and purity too. So there's a lot of things in section 3. I'll read 2 place poems first. This first one is titled St. George, Utah. In particular, I was interested in, and I'm still very interested in, how places get their names and like the boundaries of what makes a place feel like that place, or what makes something feel local or not local. And I wrote about St. George because I assumed it was named St. George after St. George, and it isn't. So this is a poem that's going to cover that and then go somewhere else. This is page 31. St. George, Utah. Not named for the saint who met the princess by the lake and with her girdle leashed the dragon, who killed it for the people's conversion, whose chapel in Windsor holds a part of his skull, part of his arm or his heart. In a griffin's egg cup, 2 of his fingers. Mormons have no saints save the pioneers. St. George was the cousin of Joseph Smith. George A. Smith, who the Paiutes called Non-Chaco Witcher, takes himself apart after watching how he removed his teeth, glasses, and wig. George did not settle that place, but called the saints who settled it, instructed them to eat potatoes raw with skin to prevent scurvy. They called him Potato Saint. A few miles north, my English great-great-grandmother once ate only potatoes and salt for 3 weeks. Her husband called on a mission to Europe. There was no other food. I do not know what her sister wife ate. When her baby fell in the fire, she rubbed halved potatoes onto the burned hands, wrapped each finger separately so they would not graft together, but cut one finger 3 months later because they said it was corrupting the other fingers in. She told this story from England. A poor woman's pastor visits and asks to pray with her. As he prays, she interrupts him with, "Potatoes, potatoes." When he stops, she explains God might hear her need slipped between the man's words and send the starving woman potatoes. Potatoes. This is the joke. The other place poem in here is Hiram, Utah, on 42. I went to Mountain Crest with Brittany. And this is partly about, I remember my sister telling me that you could smell the blood in the bus, and I thought she was lying. And you could. So I thought at some point that should find its way into a poem. But also this poem, again, is thinking about the name. There was, I'm really interested in kind of like how words can be familiarized and defamiliarized. And there was a moment when I realized that Hiram, Utah was, of course, like Hiram Smith. But because I had lived in that, like that noun wasn't a noun that I thought about, like Brigham City, it's like, Brigham Young, you know, like, but it's like, we live with this linguistic landscape, and it's not always visible, so it was interesting to try to make it kind of more visible. Okay, so Hiram, Utah. Named after Joseph Smith's older brother, Mormonism's beloved martyrs shot by a mob. Joseph fell through the jail window crying, "O Lord my God," half the Masonic distress call, "O Lord my God, is there no hope for a widow's son?" One year, someone prayed over the 4th of July parade in Spanish, weeks of letters to the editor. On blood-boiling days, you could smell the meatpacking plant inside the school bus. ICE raided the plant on December 12th, the day of Our Lady of Guadalupe, the day the Virgin Mary asked Juan Diego, "Am I not here, I who am your mother?" Okay, I'll read just a couple more. I also went on Trek 2 times, and that was another thing that was sort of interesting to look back on later as like a reenactment, which isn't how I thought about it at the time, but it is, and also as a way, like an interesting kind of ritual of embodying your ancestry and your historical and cultural narratives. So I will read two Trek poems here too. Page 39, reenactment. Martins Cove, Wyoming. We good girls pushed and pulled handcarts down one hill, up another, flour sack babies on our hips, long skirts, matching pale bonnets we sewed with our mothers. Our mothers said, we pulled to honor the pioneer women who pulled after their men joined the Mormon battalion. Our own congregation of boys waited on the last hill, wide-brimmed hats in hands. When we stopped pulling, they offered each girl a little red drawstring bag, its belly full on a few red pebbles. For who can find a virtuous woman, her price is far above rubies. And this poem is also titled Reenactment. The Mormon Trail, Wyoming. Not everyone had a pioneer ancestor they could claim. We were being the real handcart company. But Martha and her family were in that company that left too late. For 4 days, I was Martha. Her name in plastic hung low on my chest, like a medallion. Okay, I will read just my last poem. Is the poem that ends, oh no it's not, there's one more. At one point it ended this section, and then I added another one. But this poem's titled Faith. This is page 46. I do not believe in ghosts, especially now when no one has come for me. When I dream of my ancestors, they are strangers who do not tell me the truth. My Bible says to die is to give up the ghost. I hesitate to label it metaphor and picture a kind of throwing. I feel closer to Martha. I am a daughter. Poor at keeping systems, bad at faith. Still, at Martha's grave, I take a pink rock, the width of my fingertip, and speak. I will stop there. Thank you. What do I do next? Oh, sure.
And I want to start because I was listening to that podcast with Signature Books, and I loved it so much. And I loved the way that you talked about writing about family, how it takes nuance and messiness. There's nuance and and messiness in writing about family. And I just loved the way that you said there's this pioneer pride in my background. And I wondered if you could tell us just a little bit more about that.
Yeah. I still very much feel like I have a lot of Utah and Mormon heritage pride, and I grew up with a lot of, I think family stories were important, but I think pioneers, pre-railroad, was sort of something different, and I'm interested in thinking about how narratives are given to us and kind of performed, but also inherited in sort of a deeper way. I feel like sort of the interest in some of these stories feels like something I inherited. And research-wise, I also was really interested in other people's relationships to pioneers and pioneer pride. I spent a lot of time in DUP museums, which I cannot recommend enough if you're interested in more. But even a DUP museum, there's this idea that any Mormon saint who came pre-Golden Spike Railroad, that's set apart, and any little scrap, any little bit of their life is worth preserving and trying to share. And I think there's a lot of also complicated and not just polygamy. There's all sorts of kind of complicated harms and violences tied up in that too, but there's also a lot of cultural affection and sometimes reverence, and I don't know that I'm the best at reverence, but I try to be very nuanced and fair and kind, and especially because, again, if you read the book all the way to the end, I feel like I know so much doing this book, and I also feel like I know absolutely nothing, especially kind of about non-famous Mormon women's lives, because we have so little for a lot of women. I don't know if that really answered your question. I think I roamed off, but.
Yeah, that was some good roaming. Anyone else have questions?
Yeah.
So, thank you for this, Millie. I think you, as per you, set a real high bar for yourself. I think this was a hard task, and you're doing so many complicated things in it. And I was reading it while I was also perusing the Epstein files, because I apparently have a deep masochistic streak in me. And one thought occurred to me: not everyone would agree that poetry is much better for dealing with this kind of stuff than databases, I think. But I could see the similarities. I could see that thread there, and it's pretty overwhelming.
Yeah.
And I could see that was something that you're trying to work through, and I thought poetry was such a good container for that. Can you talk a little bit about how it felt to work through some of these really difficult family relationships and just people using other people?
Yeah, I wish gendered violence and sexual violence was not sort of always horribly relevant. I think there's much larger kind of cultural things going on there. I think with poetry, something that was helpful, or something that felt helpful for me about this, was the way I could have uncertainty kind of baked in. It would have been hard for me to try to ask these questions and answer these questions, even in prose, at least for me, but let alone, even though I did a lot of research, I learned a lot. Now I'm a better researcher, so my notes would be cleaner, but I did so much research, but I kind of can't imagine this being a research paper. I think that I had to be able to try to move in so many different directions, and I think poems leave there's a lot of built-in flexibility, which I think is partly why I generally tend to prefer it. You can do a lot with kind of the tension between a sentence and a line. You can have sort of you can hold multiple things at a time and not have to settle on one clear thesis or argument. And this book felt so much messier than that, and I feel like these forms that helped me. I don't know. I wouldn't even be tempted to try to write a research paper, I think, with these, or I'd have to just ask different questions. Like these questions I don't think I could have answered. Thank you. Yeah, sure, Michael.
Yeah, thanks, Millie. These are really beautiful poems.
Thank you.
Just hearing them for the first time, I just bought the book. But I have one question that, you have subjects like violence and silencing of women, and yet just from hearing you read, the book has a very gentle kind of tone, or maybe it's a humble tone, or it's a kind of respectful tone. I mean, you don't hear class rage coming through or something like that. And I just wonder if you could talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I hope I'm right. I think James Baldwin said this one time about writing, but if it's someone else, I'm so sorry. But he said, like, trying to write a sentence as clean as a bone, which was something that was sort of knocking around in my head a lot during this phase. I was trying to, and I was also reading a lot of Lorraine Nidecker and thinking a lot about like ultra compression and trying to speak as simply as possible about these things that felt very, very complicated, even sort of in like diction. But I also felt like I wanted the images or the ideas to be what was loud and not the voice. Like paring the voice back kind of felt like there were places where that felt like I had more power, if that makes sense. So yeah, I agree. I would describe the voice that way. Yeah. Thank you.
I have kind of a follow-up
Sure.
question to that. So do you find that, like, did you have early drafts that were a lot more like editorialized or like more of your own voice and then you pared back, or were you really like from the outset trying to like, no, I'm only going to have this as bare bones as possible?
It kind of started that way, and especially because the dreams, like I could try to make really compact, and I would do just arbitrary like syllabic rules to try to make them really tidy and play with a little bit. A lot of the poems I'm writing now are maybe less so that way though. Like I still am a really big fan of compression, but there can be interesting things that come with like meandering and going on. So I don't know that all of my poems kind of sound as controlled as this. Probably not. Sure, yeah, Brittany.
Speaking of squeaky clean bones, I'd love to hear more about like your thought process behind which poems you did erasures of. Like, how did you come to the decision that it was the letters section?
I kind of cheated. I love erasure, and it rarely works out for me. Like it's a really good exercise. I'm rarely happy with my erasures, but I like to do them. But I actually wrote, and I say cheated because I wrote those letters knowing I wanted to erase them. Because I could have erased the real letters, but I did not. Yeah, that's a good question. Thank you. Thank you all.
Oh my, wasn't that spectacular? Let's give her another hand. signed up because nobody was signing up. So I thought that if I signed up, people would sign up, and they did. So, yay. So since we announced our open mic readers 3 at a time, I will go ahead and then Ronald Jensen and then Rash Rivera will read. And I will start with a piece titled Hold. Picture a sturdy frame, 60 inches toes to crown, slight hips prone to fracture, a dancer's ankles. Slender, my mother, hair silver at 70. I too silvered at 70 in that long year of COVID when I cut off the auburn, trimming down to a fringe of bangs. Bangs she once cut straight across my forehead, made my forehead square, cheeks too wide, eyes too small, teeth a crooked gap. Styled her hair in softest curls, short but not too short. Slept on sponge rollers to look nice for Sunday school. I dreaded going, hair too plain, body too round, though I loved my dresses, organdy and dotted Swiss, pleats and ruffles that almost made up for my hair. When I turned 18, married and waitressing with money for a one-time cut and color, I became a champagne blonde. Once a month in my bathroom in the early morning after my cafe shift, I parted my hair a section at a time and bleached my roots. My hair, short at the nape, long on top, teased to a frothy confection of waves and curves, sprayed to stay. My mother used a spritz of Aquanet to keep her curls intact. I permed her hair when she was 60, rolled slick locks in papers, fastened rods with elastics to hold curls tight, so popular back then. Mother believed in beauty, inner beauty, her only extravagance, a pretty box of scented powder to block the shine of farm work. Widowed at 50, store clerk at 60, remarried at 70, widowed again at 80, her silver hair turned white. Before my mother died, I recognized her eyes in mine, green with hints of hazel, irises ringed with darker green, and I recognize in me her courage. May I never lose as much as she, and may I hold to life the way she did as my own hair goes white.
Hi, Ron.
Hey. He goes, look at that guy here in the pool. He looks so good. He looks so cool. And we'll crush on him. He is so hot. Unfortunately, he's not the son of God. So we have to go home and demon him and see my guy. And he got my swim. Senior trip. Can't believe it's been 45 years since we went. And there was 5. For the last year, for a senior class, we were happy to go before the UN passed. Went to Las Vegas and California too. There are many fun things for us to do. But I was changed for then and now. We'd like to remember it all was a while. Thank you.
So I've actually read this piece here before, at least an earlier draft, but it's being published in Breath and Shadow this month, so.
Congrats.
This is a nonfiction piece, kind of about living with complex PTSD. It's called The Night I Visited My Past Self. I came back to knock on your door,
call you by a name you would recognize. You didn't answer. You did not recognize your own voice, deepened by years waiting ahead of you. You were huddled up between gold silk sheets and a scratchy blanket, ears covered by the hunch of your shoulders, breath held because you tried to hide yourself under those blankets. You couldn't sleep, lying in blankets that provided a kind of inhuman warmth, the kind that cannot soothe a haunted child. You would spend hours closed in by purple pomegranate walls dipped in shadows while you stared through that window, eyes reaching past the weeping willow that loomed over you and into the stars. You didn't like what it took to put you to sleep. Funny how nightmares can be soothing, how trauma has become your lullaby. My fingers do not slip through the painted wood the ways ghosts do in movies. Maybe she was right, a friend you would make here in a couple years, that ghosts must be welcomed in. If you would open the door, I would drift to your bedside, toes barely tickling the floor. It's okay, little Jouy, it's just me. Who else but ghosts comes to visit at this time of night? That is all that has visited for a while now. I would run my hands through the soft red strands on your head and tuck the blankets in for you. I'd organize the choir of stuffies along the head of your bed into the cracks. A worn brown bunny in one arm and a penguin whose nose has been chewed up in the other. Mementos of home are under pillow made up of a plush queeble, diddle, and what are now nameless friends you've taken across countries with you. The only friends who knew about your ghosts. Maybe the only ones who would believe you in their plush silence. I'd kiss your forehead, a brief touch of cold, gentle enough you could pass it off as the AC. I'd run my thumb over your fingers, let you latch your arms onto me. And when you still couldn't sleep, I'd ask you, sweet child, how was school? Mrs. Brubaker told me you won't play with the other kids. You would have nothing to say, maybe just that it was good. Did you draw anything new today? We'd flip through that sketchbook of yours, your misshaped fairies and disproportionate goblins and your fictional monsters. You would tell me a story you're working on. It's always horror. There was just something so homey about murders and ghosts and monsters. You'd skip the parts you had deemed were too gory or too gross for me because you did not think I would be able to handle them. Or maybe because something told you you were not supposed to think about those things, and telling anyone would mean that you did think about those things. You would fall asleep to those stories you knew you were not allowed to draw or tell, at least to anyone who wasn't a ghost. I want to ask you, how was school today? I heard what you told your classmates. Do you want to talk about it? You tried to tell them. They laughed, their faces scrunched in disgust. That's gross, they said. Besides, something in you already knew, or at least believed, that no one would ever believe you. So you would just shake your head, tears staining that freckled, rosy face and snot flowing frictionlessly, tell me you were joking. It was just a joke. But I know you're thinking there's something wrong with you. I know you're thinking you're disgusting. I know you want to tell me. I'd lay there, arm wrapped around you, fingers slipping through your hair. I'd listen to quiet breaths and the soft thump of a young heart, finding a new pace in the unfamiliarity of safety. It is a feeling you would rarely meet. A feeling I could but not bear to say was more than a decade away. And so, I don't ask you, because you're 7, and you don't need to fall asleep thinking about it tonight. But I didn't ask you, and you didn't open the door. So after lingering a while longer, I pull away. I watch your door, the stairs, your home fade into the distance as I return to the present. Knowing tomorrow you will tell your friends, not of the horrors you dream about every night, but of the ghost, the one who knocked on your door, but you were afraid to answer. Thank you.
Thank you, readers. Our next 3 readers are Brett Skye and Sean and Cody Powell. Thank you.
I just want to publicly tell Millie that I love her so much.
Yeah.
That was amazing. Full circle in my heart.
So I just have a couple poems tonight. The first one is titled The Everyday. When the dog can't walk, we both suffer. A week of kennel rest is needed to heal the soft tissue in his rear leg that keeps snapping like a stale rubber band again and again for the love of the tennis ball. He literally plays too hard. Tough love depresses us both. We're missing the warm sniffs at each stop sign and getting sworn at by the grizzled husky, the chocolate labs, the beagle, the retriever, and the borderline breakout miniature Aussie, her blue eyes bright with bloodlust. We miss the curious and brave chickens watching us back through the fence and checking in on the paddling of ducks, led by a giant mallard with a shiny green head atop a sleek black body. You could go to the gym to walk, my lover suggests, when I whine that patrolling the neighborhood without my boy feels like cheating. We must forgive his ignorance. My lover is still in training, still learning the art of watching the neighbors' gardens rise and fall with the seasons, noting which children grew out of training wheels and who stopped running for the ice cream truck. He doesn't know it's important to get excited about new outfits on a ceramic porch goose, to flop belly down when there's grassy shade, and to let the dog sniff the utility box for as long as he wants to. It's not about exercise or getting enough steps. Walking the dog is the only time you slow down enough to realize there are tiny flowers in the weeds, pinpricks of blue and pink, a whole starry sky at your feet you would have missed completely. And my second poem is titled Breakfast While on Silent Retreat. This morning I ate fruit the color of the sun as it lit my face. Orange and banana sliced into quarters and coins for me as in childhood. This morning I ate a boiled egg that reminded me of myself. The necessary smack, followed by tenderly lifting the shell with my fingertips. A sandhill crane flew overhead, crossed the fingernail of moon before it dissolved into blue. Thank you.
You turn off the recording, Joseph.
Hello, I'll be reading a nonfiction piece. It's kind of long, so hopefully I'll be able to get through it all. But it's titled 2.5 Feet Under. My Instagram feed has become convinced that I will one day become a hospice nurse, and shows me videos accordingly. Most of them aren't about the job itself or how to run it, rather they explain the horrors within it. One of the hardest things to get over being a hospice nurse was a death rattle. A woman before me in a voice I can only describe as sounding enthusiastic told me. If you don't know, that's what we in the business call the patient's last breath, since it sounds more like a rattle than breathing. While she's explaining, she'll act out the scene on the hospital bed, with her mouth open and eyes glazed. It's honestly impressive how pale she can make herself look. Usually, I like to scroll through Instagram as I wake up or eat breakfast, but seeing as her pretending to be dead every morning, I think I'll have to change. These videos always leave me feeling unsettled, as if I'd walk in on a group therapy session of nurses all trying to get over their collective trauma. The stories are also bothersome because I've never had an interest in caring for the dying. Caring for others is one of the hardest jobs out there. I decided long ago that I'd rather just be the one to bury them. The interest started for me in about the 6th grade, when I found out that our elementary school drama teacher lived in a cemetery. She never explained why or what it was like, only that she was surrounded by the dead and in the worst possible spot for a zombie apocalypse. This fascinated me. People live in those? I thought to myself, imagining a renovated mausoleum with a small bed and bathroom in it. It's clear now she was talking about living in a funeral home, but that didn't matter to me. All I wanted was to be where she was. My first instinct for this was to become a mortician. While the thought of operating on someone seemed sickening to me, I figured a dead person might be better. With them, if you cut the wrong tube, then there's no risk later down the line. The line's already there. Never would I have to deal with whiny kids or squirmy adults. It was the perfect job. I would know everything about death and dying and murder and all the fun stuff. The downside, I would later learn, is having to go to medical school and then having to actually learn my way around the human body and what chemicals and formaldehydes to use. Unfortunately, I know myself and cannot be bothered to know the difference between a femur and a tibia, so the mortician came out of the question. The runner-up job was to become a grave digger, which seemed more my style. Part of the appeal would be the bragging rights. Should anyone ask me what I do for a living, I would sigh and shrug my shoulders, saying, "You'll see someday." If a deathly emergency came up, my skills would be the handiest. To test things out, at age 12, I decided to dig a grave in my backyard. I didn't have anyone to bury, but I figured it'd be best to be prepared. I went into the forested part of my backyard where the trees were too dense for anyone to see and began to make my way to the soil. The thing nobody tells you about digging graves, perhaps because it's self-evident, is that it's hard work. The first layer of soil, which went down for about 2 feet, was a breeze, and since it was stirred loose by all the rain, water, and roots. There was also lots of trash in the soil, which made digging fun. After the first foot, I found a shotgun shell already fired. Though our house is fairly new, the shell gave me many questions about its history. Had someone died on the grounds? Was I about to find their body? No. The second layer was red clay, and the hard and raw kind. Hitting it, I felt like Michelangelo, chipping away at marble. Michelangelo at least knew what he was doing and had more than a shovel to work with. I made another 6 inches before I decided the grave was too much effort and gave up. I'd mostly forgotten about the grave until my mother brought it up. "Do we still have that big hole in the backyard?" she asked. When I said yes, she nodded. "And how deep is it?" 2 feet, 2.5. That's good. I was thinking about burying Thunder back there. Thunder is our family dog. He's a little black dog, Patterdale Terrier. He's about 12 years old, although I feel like he's been 12 for a few years now. He's also still alive. I started getting mad at the idea of burying him, though it's something we need to consider. He's had seizures his whole life and has a big fatty tumor on his rib cage. Being so round, my mother calls it his boob. The older he gets, the more ratchet and mean he is. Should any dog try to walk past the fence, he'll run at them and try to kill him. And being so blood-hungry, he's become somewhat reckless. Just recently, he took a tumble while barking at another dog and started to limp. His hobble can be heard down the hall, and my brothers have taken to calling him Thumper. I want to feel bad for him, but considering that people don't walk by our house anymore, I think he had it coming. I offered to try and dig the hole a little deeper, but my mother said that 2.5 feet was fine. He's pretty small, if a bit barrel-shaped, so she's probably right. Recently, the only thing left to do is to get a tombstone for him. As I see it, though, if we did that, we might as well just put him in that cemetery. I visited one with my friend Bridget not too long ago. We weren't there to bury anything or honor anything. We were already at the human cemetery, as I was teaching Bridget to drive on the low-traffic roads. The pet one was just next door. Going in, I was shocked by how nice it was. The grass was all mowed, the graves were all cleaned. Most every grave had some form of decoration and something kind to say about the animal. Cookie Kirkman in one grave read, "Our monster we will meet on the other side." There was Archie, aka Dinky Dog, who was a rabbit, and Buddy the Butthead. My favorite was Tango Call, the 15-year-old bird who flew into heaven. All of it, the mowed grass, the flowers, seemed strange. I'd never seen these animals as anything other than dead. All the details of the grave digging were simply negligible due to the fact there would be more depth for me to focus on. Because doesn't everyone think about death and burials so much, right? Yet for Thunder waiting on death's doorstep with nothing I can do about it, these details were all I had left to figure out. I guess if we really wanted to simplify it, we could cremate him, but then there's technically the idea of where to sprinkle him and all of that, and that seems like too much effort. Instead of these details...
Time's up.
Gotcha. Thank you.
I wanted to keep listening, but we've got a lot of open mic tonight, so we're going to speed through. Next, we have Gail Christensen, Allie Moss, and Jan Europe.
Okay, I have 2 pieces. The first one is called To Be Called Upon. My grandmother bathed in a tin tub, sat down on the floor of her kitchen. A folded towel and the ivory soap within reach on a kitchen chair. My mother came from town to help, to draw the curtains, carry hot water from the monarch stove. They moved in silence, ministering angels bent on the task, an ordinance of matriarchs only. My sister and I ushered out, too young to forgive the scars of childbirth, to fathom the unglamorous calling, too small yet to carry the weight of love. Okay, this one's called Light. Like fireflies in little jars, the glass lanterns in the yard, a gift from my daughter delivered UPS. Floating along the gravel slope of the driveway, where once like a colt she galloped, laughing and sliding to catch the school bus. I too in a hurry then, chasing the fugitive hours. Now this stillness, this luminescence, small and silent like candles, with the sheltering arc of stars to make a sanctuary. Now these spirits levitating in the pitch dark, a kindness along the way, like the day stored in the jar of the heart, whatever beat down, whatever burned, turned into light.
Hello, I'm Allie. I have just this one poem today, which is an ode to dandelions, which are the best flower, just by the way. Oh, the dandelion, gold and silver in the summer wind, 1,000 wishes quiver. Seeds stroll across the asphalt to brighten the middle lane. Across the yard they land to become the neighbor's bane. Despite the hands that tear them and curse their smiling face, they still sprout a silver song, saying, I belong in this place. Oh, the dandelion, the first and last food for bees, a silent reminder all season of the happiest memories. With deep roots in tight soil, dandelions gift it air, so the grass in the meadow cherishes their care. With golden faces smiling, dandelions sing cheer, with a quiet determination through the storm or drought-plagued year. Oh, the dandelion, who never gives up the fight, to belong near the rosebush or nestled beneath the streetlight. A single flower bud claimed the corner of the empty lot of weeds. It opens its face to the sun once more, offering hundreds of parachute seeds. It spreads wishes through the air when tangling within my hair, promising, though life's unfair, dandelions are always there.
Yeah.
Hello.
Hi, Jen.
Hi, Jen.
This one's called Sitting Pretty. My parents were always telling me to sit up straight, don't slouch. Good posture is good breeding, my dad would say. If you practice good posture now, you will automatically have it all your life. Well, that didn't happen. I do admire people who sit properly, with their backs straight and their heads held high. They exude confidence and dignity. Good for them. They probably never suffer from back pain or shoulder stress, but then I bet they don't carry the weight of the world on those noble and sturdy shoulders like my slouchy shoulders do. I have a funny memory to share about sitting. One day in second grade, I had a substitute teacher. My regular teacher had gotten herself pregnant, on purpose, I am sure, but I did not approve, and left school to have her baby. I had never experienced a substitute teacher before, and I did not like this one bit. She was mean, very mean. She was punishing us kids right and left for very minor things, and kept sending us one by one to go stand in the corner until all the corners were full of slightly misbehaving 7 girls. At one point, she had to leave the classroom for a minute and admonished us to stay in our seats while she was out. Well, all except those poor souls standing in the corner. While she was gone, I noticed I was sitting in an awkward way, sitting on one leg which had then fallen asleep. So I stood partially up in my chair to unwind my dead leg. Mind you, just as the mean lady reappeared in the room. She accused me of standing up and being out of my seat. How absurd. I tried to explain to her what I was actually doing, but to no avail. She dragged me by my arms and started to lead me to a corner for punishment, but they were all filled. So she dragged me to the front of the class and had me stand with my nose against the chalkboard where she had drawn a circle for my nose to be resting against. I was more than mortified. I had never ever gotten in trouble before, and I was also indignant as I certainly didn't do anything wrong. Before the day was over, there were other kids standing at the chalkboard with their noses in drawn circles. I don't know how any of us students were supposed to be learning anything standing in corners and or the chalkboard. And I don't remember how long that substitute teacher lasted. I have absolutely no memories of my 2nd grade class experience other than that one incident, and the day a month later when President Kennedy was assassinated and we got out of school early. That incident did nothing to improve my posture, but I have never sat on my leg in a classroom chair again. And when I think back about that mean lady, I can imagine her sitting bone straight in a hard chair. And when she stands, it must have been with a broomstick up her ass.
Yeah, what if the Nolly will never think about posture the same? All right, we can do this. 10 minutes, and because we want to leave time for Millie to sign more books. All right. So our last 4 readers for tonight are Denise, Pam, Asher, and Teresa.
Hi guys.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi, Denise.
Hi, nice to see you again. This is the guys who made me feel so welcome when I first started coming to Helicon West. Okay, I have 4 poems, none of them are, let's see, maybe I'll just, since we have short time, I'm just going to read 2. Okay. This one's called percipience, and percipience is a word that means like keen perception or the ability to deeply understand something and appreciate it. Percipience. Damp with the first good rain of spring, the garden exhales its earthy breath into the lavender dark morning. From the far edges of the neighborhood, birds sing. Robins carol cheerily, chickadees echo their clear chime into the still air. Phoebe, Phoebe. Scattered like kindness across paths and planting beds, volunteer sunflower sprouts spread their seed leaves skywards. They know nothing of broken promises, hungry children, angry old men, war. It is their nature to seek the light. They push through the darkness despite endless argument, climate uncertainty, great sorrow, death. When the world of nations crumbles, burns, breaks, falls, they freely offer their small green prayers. I gather it all into my small, tight heart, which grows bigger, softer, lighter. Renewed, re-illuminated, I turn towards the unmade day, once again, willing. Okay, and this is called Because. This is kind of a prose poem, and it's after Rosemary went to the drummer.
As I waited to turn left out of the parking lot, I saw them standing on the curb. With one hand, the woman was holding the girl's hand, and the other she was carrying a milk crate and had a piece of cardboard tucked under the same arm. The woman looked towards me to see if I was going to move. I looked at her and nodded, letting her know I saw them. She nodded back. We smiled at each other. As they ran across the road, the girl's pink Hello Kitty backpack bounced. Their breath clouds lingered in the air. Cross traffic appeared and I had to wait longer. I watched as the mother set the milk crate and the cardboard down on the snowbank. She smoothed the girl's flyaway hair from her face, tucking it back into her hood. She pulled her close, kissed her gently on the forehead, and guided her to sit on the crate. The woman picked up the cardboard, held it out in front of her as cars turned towards the waiting exit to exit the parking lot. She waved at each car. I never carry cash these days. There's not much reason. All transactions seem to take place with small squares of plastic or through magic phone apps. Nothing changes hands directly, except I remember that my friend had given me cash for the tickets I had purchased recently. My heart felt light. I turned out of the parking lot, drove across the street and around the corner into the other parking lot, pulling up in the line at the exit. I retrieved the folded cash from my wallet and rolled down the window. When it was my turn, I pulled forward. We saw each other and smiled in recognition. I leaned across the front seat. She met me at the window. Our fingers touched as she took the offering. She stepped back, touched her heart with her hand, then waved. I waved back as I pulled away. I don't know what happened in the world to bring those two to that corner. I do not know their journey or their story. I'm certain it wasn't easy or what they would have chosen. What I do know is that I witnessed love in their hand holding, in their hugs, in that forehead kiss. I witnessed love in a parking lot on a frosty day. It may not change the whole world, but it changed mine.
Yeah.
I've called this story Last Seat on the Train. She sat very stiff and proper, with her back straight on the train seat. Her whole body seemed rigid and straight, only her eyes moved, seeing everything moving past out of the window. The last stop was Oklahoma City, where she'd gotten on the train. I was seated across from her. I thought I'd give it a few long miles before I asked her any questions. For now, I gazed out the wide window myself and tried to guess at where she was heading and why. She seemed young to be traveling alone, too young to be a mother maybe. Her eyes were open wide and she seemed to blink a lot, blinking back tears or fears. Her dress was a beautiful calico print and she had clean leather boots. They were lace-up boots like most of us wore in the times. 1890 wasn't about high fashion in these parts. Folks were farming or working in factories, schools, or hired help. Her feet in those boots were stock still on the train car floor. She wasn't yet relaxed enough to cross them at the ankles. The leather suitcase she had was tucked under her feet. It was worn a bit and none too bulky. Maybe she'd left in a hurry, just taken very few items. Or maybe she didn't own a lot. Maybe she was traveling home where she had more possessions waiting. I admired her reflection through the train window so as not to stare at her directly. She seemed sad or maybe just anxious. She wore a beautiful necklace, a cameo, and she wore gloves even though it was springtime and fairly warm. Her hands couldn't keep still in her lap. She kept holding them or folding them and then flexing her fingers, tidying her hair, which didn't need any tidying. I felt anxious for her, motherly maybe. She was about the age of my daughter Meg. The thoughts of Meg made me smile. She'd taken off her job as a nanny a few years back, and the family encouraged her to stay on and attend college there. She'd become a teacher, and I was right proud of her. decent teaching job in a decent town with respectful folks sending their young ones to learn from her. Meg had been nervous to leave our town and our farm, but she knew she wanted to have more experiences out in the world. We'd encouraged her to take the job after meeting the man she would be working for. He'd seemed kind and trustworthy. We'd met him at the train station. He seemed pleased to make Meg's acquaintance and ours too. He paid some kind compliments to George and I, reflecting how we'd raised a smart and strong daughter. George felt the compliments were sincere. I think we both worried he could be a hustler or a fake. Last thing we'd want our Meg to have is some kind of a scandal or to be treated poorly. Mr. Thornton seemed well-educated and well-spoken. He described his wife, Mamie, and their 4 young children Meg would be living with and working with. He described their house and yard. Mr. Thornton worked long hours and felt his wife could use the help. Her mother had lived close and had helped quite a bit, but she'd taken ill and wasn't able to leave her home. Meg had ridden the train back with him, and he had assured her that if it was not to her liking or too taxing for her, she could return home after a trial period of 30 days. Meg had grown to love the children and Miss Mamie in that time. She didn't mind some hard work in the kitchen and outside in their flower gardens. It had been a great opportunity for her, and we saw her each summer. George and I had gotten used to her being a working girl and looked forward to her letters. I glanced at the young girl on the train as she fidgeted her hands. The porter was coming through to check our tickets. I held mine in my left hand, ready for him. She glanced at my ticket, then backwards seeing the porter. Her brown eyes widened and she sat up even straighter, retrieving her purse from near her hip. She fumbled the silver clasp and then found her ticket. I smiled at her, hoping the warmth would help her ease her stress. The porter said, "Good afternoon, ladies," as he accepted our tickets. I answered a thank you, and he asked if we were comfortable. Could he do anything else for us? A yes for comfort and a no thank you for anything else, I replied. I held the Oklahoma City newspaper in my lap. I bought it for something interesting to read while on the train ride. She was looking at the newsprint, and I asked her if she'd like to borrow it. "Oh, might I please, ma'am?" she said. "Thank you, ma'am." I handed it to her, and she unfolded it and turned to the last pages, mostly jobs that were available. That brought my curiosity to a full simmer. I had to ask her where she was heading, what she was up to, why was she so nervous or anxious. "What's your name, sweet girl?" I asked. She answered without looking up from the newsprint. "I'm Emily Stratford, ma'am." "I'm pleased to meet you, Emily Stratford. I'm Valerie Anderson. What brings you traveling on such a beautiful spring day?" This time she looked up. She looked directly at me, sized me up as a woman she could trust, and let out a sigh. "I'm heading for a job."
Pam.
That's the last sentence. I'm good.
I don't live up here anymore, so I don't get to come that often, so I'm glad it worked out today. So we spent most of last year homeless down in Ogden at the shelter, and so this is kind of a poem I've been working on about weird things you see living in a homeless shelter. Equivalent exchange. Montego Red 100s cost $5.25 at the 25th Street Bodega, where the Indian guy manning the counter doesn't ID everyone. Beside the train yard at the Lantern House homeless shelter, a single cigarette costs 50-cent cash. But sometimes you can pay in trade with a cup of noodles, 2 packs of instant coffee, 4 water flavor packets, a warm can of off-brand Coke from the bottom of your pack.
Okay, I'm gonna be super quick. I read this here recently, but I'm like honor bound to read this every April.
Yes.
Woo! It is National Poetry Month, so I am compelled to consume a stack of poetry magazines, stiff from standing untouched so long. From the vacant warmth of the coffee shop, I watch cars rooster tail down Main Street, wet from last night's thin snow. Before long I will follow. Work today too full of to-do lists, boxes in want of check marks, precious attention. I put it off 10 minutes more, chew on poetry for inspiration. Nothing stirs me, drinks me in like dark espresso, lingers like the echo of your fingertips trailing my bare hip bone, my soft thighs in the pre-dawn hush of our bedroom. Inspiration trills behind my sternum as I bookmark last year's poetry, toss out my empty coffee cup, leave this place to become somebody else.
We did that in a clip, and I think we've had the best night. It's been so good, thank you. I want to do a quick recap, but Millie is unrecapable. I can't recap her, so talk with her and buy books. Here's the recap of the open mic. The silver, the white, the love, the choir of plush, ghosts, the everyday dog, the sister, the lover, the weight and the power of words, the hospice nurse, the caring, the learning, the grandmother bathing, firefly lanterns, dandelions, gold and silver, shoulders that carry the world, the first good rain in spring, the unmade day, the last seat on the train, a single cigarette, a stack of poetry. And that's what we've got here at Helicon, a stack of poetry. I would love it if people would put away the chairs for us, and if you would come back next time, because it's the Creative Writing Contest winners from USU, April 23rd. I'll see you right here. Thanks, everyone.